The woman's name is Sharon. She's 250 years old. In her last life, she was cursed by her own maid. In order to atone for her sins, she had to sew 1,000 dresses for the maid she had killed. Sharon's name in her previous life was Ruelin. As a rich young lady, she was about to get married. Curious about her future husband, she sent her servant, Kai Fu, to secretly draw her fiancé's face. Then she shared her joy with her maid, Xiao Fen, but Xiao Fen's unintentional remark made her unhappy. Then she pushed Xiao Fen down. She was jealous that Xiao Fen was more educated than her. Poor Xiao Fen not only tolerated Ruelin's temperamental behavior, she even worked day and night to make Ruelin's wedding clothes. Even when she was sleepy, she didn't dare to slack off. In order not to get sleepy again, she took a sewing needle and stabbed herself. A few days later, she finally finished Ruelin's wedding dress. Seeing no one around, Xiao Fen's mind came up with a bold idea. She secretly put on the dress, but the young master, Ming Xian, who had come to see his fiancée, caught her in the act. Just one look, the seed of love sprouted in Ming Xian's heart, falling in love with Xiao Fen at first sight. Ming Xian swore in his heart that he would never marry her. Xiao Fen returned to his house with a tired body. Unexpectedly, she bumped into a furious Ruelin. She rushed up and beat Xiao Fen severely. Then she angrily grabbed the wedding dress and tore it to shreds. No matter how much Xiao Fen begged for mercy, she didn't budge a bit. Then, Ruelin turned around and went back inside. She took the red-hot iron from the coals. Despite Xiao Fen's struggles, she couldn't escape being burned. Soon after, Ruelin finally got her wedding day. She walked slowly towards the groom with a joyful heart. But just as the two of them were kneeling down, Ming Xian realized that the bride was not the one he had seen yesterday. He looked around for the girl. Finally he saw Xiao Fen in the crowd with her face burned. This scene pierced Ming Xian's heart. Because he couldn't disobey his parents, he can only marry a woman he doesn't love. Xiao Fen was brought into the palace as Ruelin's dowry. That night, Ming Xian learned from the servants that Xiao Fen's face was burned by Ruelin. The truth made his eyes red. He resented himself for not being able to protect Xiao Fen. That day, Ming Xian was about to go out when he bumped into Xiao Fen. He told Xiao Fen to go to the pharmacy to get a medicine for his burns. Little did he know that his care would bring Xiao Fen bad luck. Soon after, Ruelin was beating Xiao Fen severely with a cane. Ming Xian happened to see this scene. She accused Xiao Fen of stealing her cosmetics. Ming Xian asked Xiao Fen to show him the box. Xiao Fen handed over the box in an aggravated manner. Ming Xian just smelled it and realized that it was medicine for burns from the drugstore that Xiao Fen had bought. He scolded Ruelin and warned her not to do it again. Xiao Fen's hand was beaten so badly with a cane that she couldn't even hold a pestle and mortar. She couldn't complain even though she was treated so badly. Because she was just a humble maid, she gently touched the burn medicine Ming Xian gave her. And all this was watched silently by a woman outside the courtyard. Time flew by and a few years passed. Xiao Fen had grown into a big girl. Despite the terrible scars on her face, the servants at home loved Xiao Fen. At that moment, Ming Xian returned to the house. The servants immediately rose to greet her. Ming Xian didn't look down on the servants. He sat down at the servants' table. He picked up Xiao Fen's bowl and drank from it. All this was seen by Ruelin, who was hiding at the side. She and Ming Xian had been married for 5 years but had no children. She lied that she was pregnant. She told Ming Xian that she wanted to eat wild strawberries. The next day, Ruelin ordered Xiao Fen to go up the mountain to look for wild strawberries. Xiao Fen didn't know that it was all a plot by Ruelin, because there are no strawberries in this season. At that moment, Xiao Fen slipped and rolled down the hill. The maid hurriedly helped Xiao Fen up. Xiao Fen stubbornly got up and continued to search. The maid who couldn't stand it told everything. Xiao Fen realized that Ruelin's real purpose was to get rid of her, but Ruelin didn't realize that the maid couldn't bear to kill Xiao Fen. Xiao Fen told the maid that she would kill herself. She then pushed the maid away and jumped off the cliff alone. Ming Xian, who was informed of the incident, immediately summoned his men to look for her. In fact, Xiao Fen didn't jump off the cliff. She was tying a vine on a tree to kill herself. She looked at the vines in front of her. She couldn't help but wonder if this was her fate. Ming Xian and his servants searched for Xiao Fen. They shouted out Xiao Fen's name but got no response. Just as Xiao Fen was about to kill himself, Ming Xian's voice came from afar. At the same time, Ruelin asked the maid why there was so much noise outside. The maid explained that Xiao Fen had gone to look for wild strawberries and fell off the cliff. Ruelin even looked surprised. Then he said he was going to marry Xiao Fen to the tanner's son. And from the maid, the tanner's son is a fool. On the other hand, Xiao Fen hid behind a rock and quietly watched Ming Xian, who was anxiously looking for her. The person she likes is close by but she doesn't dare to go out to see him. 8 months have passed. This day someone knocked on the door. The maid opened the door to find Xiao Fen, who was mistakenly thought to be dead. Xiao Fen walked through the door with a bundle of wild strawberries in his arms. Ruelin came out and looked at the scene with disbelief. The servants of the family also gathered around. It turns out that Xiao Fen has been working for the past 8 months while waiting for the wild strawberry season to bloom. When she looked up, she wasn't surprised to see Ruelin's flat stomach. Looking at the plate of wild strawberries in front of her, Ming Xian's heart was overjoyed. Her beloved Xiao Fen was actually lost and found again. After 5 years of marriage, Ruelin is still not pregnant. The old lady called a fortune teller. The fortune teller said that Ruelin's destiny is childless. but at the same time, there will be 3 boys born in the house. At that moment, Xiao Fen brought tea. The fortune teller was shocked when he saw Xiao Fen. After inquiring about Xiao Fen's date of birth, the fortune teller concluded that Xiao Fen was the one who could continue the family's lineage. The old lady immediately decided to have a child in her womb so that Xiao Fen and Ming Xian could share a room together. That night, Ruilin came to Ming Xian's house. Even though she was unhappy, she couldn't stop her. Looking at the shadows of her husband and Xiao Fen, she was furious. This sudden happiness left Ming Xian at a loss for words. He could finally be with the girl he loved. Then he blew out the candle in the room. Outside the room, Ruilin saw this scene and left with a vengeance. Ming Xian couldn't bear to let Xiao Fen become a victim. That night, nothing happened between Xiao Fen and Ming Xian, but they were sure of their love for each other. But it didn't last long. Ming Xian was arrested because of his party's political stance, and Ruilin was supposed to be executed, but she didn't want to die, so she found Xiao Fen to replace her. So Xiao Fen was arrested in Ruilin's clothes. Ruilin hid behind the water tank and watched. Xiao Fen was brutally tortured by the soldiers, but he didn't say anything against Ming Xian. On the other side, Ming Xian was waiting for his own end, but Xiao Fen came here with a weak body. She fell to the ground because of her physical strength. Ming Xian rushed up to her and hugged her in pain. Only then did he realize that Xiao Fen's vocal cords had been brutally severed. The kind servant felt sorry for Xiao Fen, so she lied to Ruilin and told her that Xiao Fen was dead. Ruilin was still hoping for the safe return of Ming Xian. Unbeknownst to her, Ming Xian and Xiao Fen were already living happily together in the dilapidated grass hut. Ming Xian took out a silver ring. He put the ring on Xiao Fen's ring finger. Xiao Fen was so moved that she cried. He hoped that Xiao Fen would be happy in her next life. Then they went outside the house. Xiao Fen lay on Ming Xian's shoulder and looked at the stars. She hugged Ming Xian tightly, but he realized that Xiao Fen's silver ring was missing. Xiao Fen got up and pointed to the distance. It turns out that the ring has the power to make people's wishes come true when it draws on the light of the moon. Then the two of them got up and went back. They didn't realize that Ruilin, who was hiding outside the courtyard, could see everything clearly. She quietly took Xiao Fen's ring and put it on her hand. She vowed to take back everything that belonged to her. After they were asleep, she took a bundle of straw and set fire to the dilapidated hut. Ming Xian woke up in his sleep from the smoke. He immediately woke up Xiao Fen to escape. Ruilin watched the fire with indifference from outside the door. Ming Xian picked up Xiao Fen. Unexpectedly, he accidentally let go of Xiao Fen's hand due to the heat. Ruilin desperately tried to stop Ming Xian from saving Xiao Fen. Ming Xian ignored Ruilin's actions. At this moment, he only wanted to save Xiao Fen. Xiao Fen woke up and saw the scene in front of him. Ming Xian pushed Ruilin away. He shouted Xiao Fen's name. Xiao Fen shook his head at Ming Xian and asked him not to save him, but Ming Xian went back to the house and hugged Xiao Fen. Seeing the grass hut completely engulfed by fire, Ruilin, who had lost his mind, instantly came to his senses. At that moment, a hand suddenly grabbed Ruilin's foot. Xiao Fen used her last strength to curse Ruilin to become a ghost in hell. Ruilin herself caused Ming Xian to die in the fire. At this moment, her heart was completely dead. She went to the cliff in a state of despair. She decided to jump to her death. Looking at the ring she stole, she felt that she was incredibly ironic. She jumped into the river in despair. At that moment, the ring on her hand also fell off. Perhaps the curse was fulfilled. Ruilin didn't die. Then she went back to the mansion with her memories. But everything had changed. She immediately asked an old man passing by for news of her parents. But the old man in front of her was Kai Fu. 30 years have passed. Her parents died 30 years ago. Ruilin suddenly laughed like a mad woman. Undenying her fate, she went to the river again to kill herself. Step by step, she walked towards the middle of the river until the water was completely over her head. Then a merchantwoman rode by with her caravan. She found Ruilin lying by the river. Ruilin woke up again. The woman's name was Beiji. She told Ruilin that they were both immortal. Xiao Fen's curse came true. Ruilin became immortal. Since then, Ruilin and Beiji have lived a life of dependence. They traveled through many ages and countries. Finally, Ruilin came to Japan to study design, just to meet the reincarnated Xiao Fen to atone for her sins. More than 200 years have passed since then. Xiao Fen was reincarnated as Hira. As a tour guide, she was often bullied by travelers. One day, an old man rushed into the office looking for Hira. She immediately put down her work and went to receive him. But what she got was a hard slap from the old man. It turned out that the old man had booked a hot spring hotel without his wife's knowledge. Coincidentally, his wife found out. So the old man came to Hira to ask for compensation, but the message was actually sent by the hotel. The old man knew he was in the wrong and was about to leave. Hira asked him why he didn't apologize. The old man, still angry, tries to hit Hira. Hira pointed to the surveillance camera and said she would go to the police to accuse him. At night, Hira sent a message to her prosecutor boyfriend saying she had to work overtime, so she couldn't go to the appointment, and her boyfriend, Ji-hoon, sent a message back, pretending to be concerned. Hira was so happy to receive Ji-hoon's message, but she didn't know that Ji-hoon was drinking red wine and getting a hotel room with another woman. Hira still thinks that Ji-hoon loves only herself. The next day, Hira was at work when she got a call from the police. Her boyfriend is under investigation. After work, Hira rushed to the police station. When Ji-hoon saw Hira, He turned his head away. When Hira saw the handcuffs on her boyfriend's hands, she thought he was wrongly accused, but Ji-hoon was so ashamed that he didn't know what to say. Then a woman rushed up and kicked him down. Then she beat him up. Hira was heartbroken when she saw her boyfriend being beaten. Then the woman revealed Ji-hoon's true identity. Hira thought the woman had mistaken him for someone else. Until the police confirmed the woman's story, Hira was confused. However, Ji-hoon said that he really liked Hira. After all, he didn't cheat Hira out of her money. Hira was happy to have a prosecutor's boyfriend. Ji-hoon didn't want to burst her illusion of happiness. But Hira said that even though Ji-hoon cheated her, she still loved him. But even so, Hira was disliked severely. Because her parents are dead and she's raising a loser aunt, Hira withdrew her hand from Ji-hoon's grip. Ji-hoon also shamelessly advised Hira, when a nice man approaches you, you must run away, because he's either an organ trafficker or a murderer. Hira was so angry that she overturned the table. She scolded him and left. In order to save cab fare, she walked home, heartbroken. Just before she reached the door, the landlord stopped her and demanded that Hira move out next month. It turned out that Hira's aunt had secretly taken the security deposit for the house. Hira was stunned. She went home and searched for the security deposit. Her aunt came home. Hira asked her where she had spent the deposit. To her surprise, she plays the poor girl and says she's sick. Hira is hysterical and wants her aunt to return the money. Then Auntie took out a contract for the purchase of a house. It turned out that Auntie had bought an abandoned house on the corner without Hira's knowledge. She was so happy that she thought it would be demolished. But in the end, her hopes were dashed. Hira was devastated. She took her aunt's pills and pushed them into her mouth. Then she force-fed them to her aunt. She yelled at her aunt, saying that they'd both die together. Hira's friend came in time to pull them apart. Hira took off the designer jacket that her friend gave her and let out her emotions. Then she ran out the door. In one day, she was betrayed by her lover and her family. With nothing left to lose, Hira cried. A person like her can't even hope to get married. On the other side, the man in the sports car is Ming Xian's reincarnation named Su-ho. He picked up a bottle of wine worth 8,000 euros and slammed it on the ground. The reason why he was angry was because the partner was trying to pass off a good wine as a bad one. Don't look at Su-ho as being so arrogant, because he's got everything he needs. He drives a sports car and live in an old castle. These are just some of the things that he's used to, all because he's one of the most powerful men in the business. That same night, he was approached by his partner in wine, who had passed him off as the best. He was puzzled and asked who he really was. It turns out that anyone who has a relationship with Su-ho or tries to steal his contract will somehow die or get hurt. His smart-ass son fell down the stairs of the wine warehouse and broke his bones, something that had never happened before. The partner wine merchant thought Su-ho had magical powers and praised Su-ho as a lucky man who was blessed by God. I hope he'll forgive his son for his rude behavior today, sincerely requesting Su-ho to continue his contract. But the all-powerful Su-ho also had one regret in his heart. For more than 10 years, he had been searching for a girl, but he never found her. When Su-ho was young, there was an explosion at the factory where his father worked. A co-worker left Su-ho's father alone to escape. Su-ho begged the man to save his father, but the man ran away. Desperate to save his father, Su-ho rushed into the fire alone. But the accident happened again. There was a secondary explosion at the factory. Eventually, Su-ho's father died. Poor Su-ho not only became an orphan, he was also disfigured. Hera's father and Su-ho's father were good friends, so he adopted Su-ho. That's how Su-ho came into Hera's life. From then on, Su-ho has been living a very careful life as a foster child. When he was tutoring, Hera fell asleep. Hera pandered to Su-ho and wanted to play for an hour before studying. Su-ho sternly refused. He asked Hera if she was afraid of her scars, but Hera reassures him that it's okay. Su-ho's heart was gradually warmed by Hera, but it didn't last long. Then Hera's family went bankrupt. Su-ho lost contact with Hera. For so many years, he has been asking people in China to look for Hera's whereabouts, but he couldn't find anything. At this time, Hera was suffering from the double blow of her boyfriend and aunt. She's broken down and crying. Her parents have passed away after her family went bankrupt. She is living a strong life on her own, but fate has treated her unfairly again. She recalled the happy moments with her boyfriend. She thought she'd met someone she could trust with her life, but he was a liar. In a trance, she saw herself working hard to survive, and the days when she was happy with her mom and dad. Hera even thought she was going to die, because she saw Su-ho. Slowly, Hera fell asleep in the cold wind. In her sleep, there was a purple coat on her body. Then she remembered that on her 14th birthday, her father had customized a coat for her at Sharon's suit shop. Then the family went bankrupt, so she didn't pick up the coat. When she woke up, Hera decided to retrieve the coat. She wondered if wearing that coat would change her life. So Hera wore a pair of slippers and a thin shirt. On a cold winter night, she searched for the location of the suit store from her youthful memories. After a lot of searching, she finally found it. Hira found the courage to walk up the steps. When she pushed open the door, she found the atmosphere a little strange. Then a beautifully built woman appeared through the door. Her name was Sharon, and she was the owner of the suit store. She's been waiting for Hira for 250 years, because this is a face she knows all too well. 250 years ago, she had a bad relationship with Hira in her past life. After Hira made her intentions clear, Sharon recognized her immediately. Hira was stunned the moment she put on her coat. The coat that was custom made for her when she was 14 years old fit her perfectly. Sharon dressed Hira up. She was transformed from a downtrodden girl to a beautiful girl. She didn't even know it was a magic coat. Then Sharon drove Hira home. On the way, she offered to make a deal with Hira. She wanted to swap identities with Hira, and Hira agreed. The next morning, Hira wore the coat to work. She got good news right away. The old man who slapped her yesterday has been hospitalized after a dway accident. Hira looked at the coat in her hand, but she felt strange inside. Hira and her colleagues came to the cafeteria for lunch. The team leader told Hira that the squid is good today, so she should eat more. Unfortunately, when it was Hira's turn, there was no more squid. Hira could only leave in frustration. In the afternoon, during the meeting, colleagues started to have stomach pains. Only Hira was unharmed. It turned out that there was something wrong with the calamari at lunch. The whole company started to have diarrhea. At that moment, the leader said that one of them needed to go abroad for an urgent business trip. But now everyone is having diarrhea, so everyone looked at Hira. And so Hira was blessed. She was given the opportunity to go abroad. It's a magical coat. Hira came to the country to meet her co-workers and to have a good time. At the same time, Suho found out about Hira, whom he had been looking for. Seeing her current photo, he confirmed that she is the one he's been longing for. In the evening, Suho was reading the newspaper in front of the cafe. Hira passed right in front of him. They missed each other on the street. The next day, the co-workers gave Hira a difficult task. They asked her to take care of an eccentric photographer. For the sake of her co-workers begging, she had no choice but to do it. Hira went to the promised place to look for the photographer. She saw a man dressed like her co-workers described. So, she purposely barged into Suho's shot and said hello to him. Suho was stunned when he saw Hira. The person he's been looking for just appeared in front of him unexpectedly. He almost lost control of his emotions. At this moment, Suho was sure that she was the girl he had been waiting for. Then Hira said sadly that she was dumped by her boyfriend. But Suho said it was a good thing, because it gives her a chance to date a better man. Hira posed for Suho to take her picture. Then she accidentally stepped on the ground and rolled down the hill. She was instantly humiliated. Suho was worried. He jumped up and ran towards Hira. Without saying a word, he started to take off her clothes. It turned out that Hira's right hand was dislocated. He gently took off Hira's coat. Then he gave her a gentle push. Hira's arm stopped hurting. And then, Suho invited Hira for lunch. He even thought of carrying him on his back. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon, who is still locked up in the police station, was thinking about Hira. On the other side, Suho took Hira around to see the beautiful scenery. As a tour guide, Hira is also guiding Suho. Suho cherished the time he spent with Hira. He was taking pictures of her like crazy. They look like a couple in love. Then they went to the church to make a wish, and Suho's eyes were only on Hira making the wish. When Hira came to the beach, she couldn't help but cry, because she had only seen this scene in her dreams. She immediately wiped away her tears. She invited Suho to eat ice cream by the side of the road, and so they ate ice cream together again under the sunset. Suho captured Hira's happiest moment. He wanted to freeze this moment in time, but happiness is always fleeting. Soon it was dark. Hira confessed to Suho that she was actually a travel agent. Unbeknownst to her, Suho also hid his identity. He wasn't the photographer she was looking for. Suho then drove Hira back to the hotel. After saying goodbye to Suho, Hira realized through her colleagues that she had mistaken him for someone else. Suho was not the photographer she was looking for. Back at home, Suho remembers the good times he had with Hira when he was young. He looked at the photos he took of Hira today. The next day, Hira received a gift box. When she opened the box, there was a pair of cashmere gloves, a photo Suho took of her yesterday, and a postcard. Suho confessed that he cheated on Hira. On this day, Hira couldn't wait to visit the castle she had longed for. The staff told Hira that the castle would be closed after 9 p.m. Suho drove back at that time, but they missed each other at the corner. Hira was delighted by the flowers and plants in the castle. Fascinated by the statue, Hira missed the closing time without realizing it. She was locked inside the castle. As night fell, Hira had to stay in the castle. Suho realized that the wine was gone. He went to the wine cellar to get some wine, but as soon as he left the house, he saw Hira lying on a chair, sleeping. He gently squatted down and looked at the girl he'd always dreamed of. He had the courage to lift her hair. At that moment, he was scared and excited. The next day, Hira woke up and realized she was sleeping in her bed. She runs around blindly. In her haste, she bumped into Suho, who was taking a bath. She ran away and remembered that she hadn't taken her clothes. She had to come back again. When Suho saw her, he asked her to join him for breakfast. Hira is surprised to see Suho again. She immediately asked him why he lied about being a photographer. She didn't expect Suho to say it was because he wanted to be with her. Hira is confused confused. Suho explains that he's actually a businessman who does charity work. Hira, who had just let her guard down, suddenly remembered her ex-boyfriend's advice. If a nice guy approaches you, run away. He's either a murderer or an organ trafficker. Hira shuddered at the thought and put down her coffee. She immediately found an excuse to run away. Back in Seoul, Hira's head hurts when she sees the dilapidated house her aunt bought with a loan. As soon as she got home, Auntie brought her a drink with a lot of enthusiasm, but Hira doesn't appreciate it. The aunt is happy to tell Hira that the house has been sold. The buyer had arranged a new place for them. By nightfall, Hira and her aunt arrived at the buyer's place with great trepidation. Upon entering, they were stunned by the lavishness of the decorations. Hira thought her aunt was in trouble again. Just then, Suho's voice came. Hira was stunned. Suho was the one who bought the house. Hira was at a loss for words. Auntie was thrilled to stay in this luxurious room for the first time. She thought they had an unusual relationship, but Hira felt uncomfortable. She found an excuse to leave the house. A stubborn Hira had nowhere else to go. She had to go to Sharon's suit store. She asked Sharon to take her in for the night. Sharon not only agreed, but also customized many new clothes for Hira. Hira didn't understand why Sharon made her clothes. Sharon said it was because she did something wrong to Hira in her past life. Hira was curious. Sharon said that Hira stole the man she loved, and this time she's going to take it all back. Unsure of what to expect, Hira happily agreed, not realizing that this could lead to trouble in her future. At that moment, ex-boyfriend Ji-hoon sends Hira a picture of him working out. Hira is speechless. Sharon looks at the photos and asks Hira if she can steal her boyfriend. Hira not only agreed, she asked Sharon to play with Ji-hoon as much as she could when she got her hands on him, and to make him feel as much pain as possible. The next day, Hira went out from work and saw Suho teasing his dog. It turned out that Suho had come to ask Hira to have lunch with him. Hira directly asked Suho if he likes her. Suho didn't deny it. Hira wondered why Suho liked her, because poor women in Korea are not attractive. She said she had low self-esteem, and her parents were dead, and she didn't have a high education. But Suho didn't care about that. Meanwhile, Sharon was trying to remember Ji-hoon's picture. She wanted to make sure he was the one she was looking for. Suddenly, she sensed something, then a gust of wind hit her. Sharon looked at the man in the car. The man in the car in front of her was the man she had been searching for 250 years. She stood up excitedly. The items on the table floated up with her. Sharon stared at the man in the car in amazement. The man in the car was Suho. In the office, Hira was still remembering her time with Suho, but then she received a message from Ji-hoon asking to get back together. Ji-hoon saw the message on his cell phone and ran to the office. What he didn't expect was a breakup message from Hira. After Hira got off work, Ji-hoon, who was standing by, called out to her. She had a shy look on her face. Hira just turned her head and left. Ji-hoon, who was still in love with Hira, came after her and gave her the flowers she bought. When Hira didn't budge, he kneeled down and asked Hira to forgive him. At that moment, a garbage truck passed by. Hira took the flowers and threw them into the garbage truck. On the other side, Sharon saw Suho again while drinking coffee on the side of the road. At this moment, she was sure that her husband had appeared. Sharon couldn't wait to meet Beiji. She thought if she married Suho, the curse would be lifted. But Beiji said only Hira could break the curse, and that she'll also sow their dowry when they get married. Hearing this, Sharon became furious. Beiji warned her not to do anything, but was Sharon going to give up like that? More than 200 years ago, the two of them were burnt alive in a fire by the cruel young lady. More than 200 years later, Ming Xian and Xiao Fen were reincarnated. Fate binds them together again. Ming Xian became Suho, a billionaire businessman. Xiao Fen became Hira, a poor working girl who was abandoned by her boyfriend and cheated by her aunt. By mistake, Hira even moved into Suho's house. Suho watched Hira cooking for herself with fascination. Suho helps her out in the kitchen. They look like a newlywed couple in the kitchen. Soon a big meal was ready. Hira thanked Suho for taking care of her. After the meal, Hira, who had drunk too much, told Suho what she had in her heart. She is a person with low self-esteem and no dreams. She feels inferior in front of Suho. She asked Suho not to like her, because she doesn't think she's good enough for Suho. Suho's heart ached when he saw this hurt girl in front of him. He vowed to protect her twice as much. That day, Hira was walking home. Her ex-boyfriend, Ji-hoon, suddenly appeared and asked to get back together. In the face of Ji-hoon's persistent behavior, Hira rejected him. On weekends, Hira is reading in her room. Suho wants to ask her to go out with him. Hira suddenly remembered that she had to go to Sharon's suit store today. As soon as she pushed open the door, she met Suho's eyes. They decided to go to the suit store together. At that moment, Sharon is drinking hot milk and feels cold all over. Then Hira and Suho walked in together, but Sharon fell asleep because of her sin. It was this sleep that caused Sharon to miss the chance to see Suho. When she woke up, Sharon was furious. She immediately dressed up and found Ji-hoon. She mistook Hira's ex-boyfriend for her reincarnated husband, and Ji-hoon thought Sharon was the girl she cheated on when she was a prosecutor. Sharon didn't want to scare Ji-hoon. She just asked him to come to the suit store sometime. Ji-hoon doesn't know what to make of it. On the other hand, Suho wanted to buy a piece of land. He didn't realize that the owner of the land was Beiji, but Suho had a feeling that Beiji was familiar to him. Suho was adopted by Hira's father. The two of them are very close to each other. They studied and played together. That day, day, Suho ran home with the reeds he had picked for Hira, but he saw a scene that broke his heart. It turned out that Hira's father had adopted Suho so that Hira would study hard after seeing poor Suho. Realizing the truth, Suho left Hira's house in a state of despair. He frantically stepped on the reeds he picked for Hira. Then Beiji appeared and comforted Suho. She told Suho that his future would be bright. From then on, Suho's studies and career started to go well. Suho recognized the person in front of him as the same aunt who had encouraged him back then. He hugged Beiji with excitement. Beiji invited Suho to her home. Suho said he had been very lucky all these years. Beiji was about to ask Suho if he had a favorite person. Sharon knocked at the door. Beiji pretended not to be home so she wouldn't find out about Suho. Sharon could only leave in frustration. And so she missed Suho again. Beiji knew from Suho's description that he liked Hira. She wanted them to be together. This was the only way to end God's punishment on her and Sharon. When Sharon returned to the suit store, she started making clothes to vent her emotions. Then Beiji came to her. She invited Sharon to go on a trip to get away from it all. The next day Sharon was packing for her trip. And then Suho came to the suit store. Sharon was caught off guard. When she saw the man she'd always wanted to meet, she stared at him in a daze. It was as if time had stood still. Suho had come to customize Hira's suit. Sharon could only smile when she realized the truth. Apparently, the man in front of her had forgotten about her. Sharon stared at Suho's back as he left in a daze. That day, Suho invited Hira's friend Ying Mei to his house. Ying Mei's fiancé, Park Gon, is also Hira's childhood friend. Park Gon was always suspicious of Suho, so he pressed him. He finally learned a secret that shocked everyone. The Suho in front of him is the Suho who was adopted by Hira's father. Hira didn't know anything about it. Suho confessed his true identity. Hira couldn't accept this fact and immediately got up and left. Suho immediately chased her out the door. He tells Hira that he came back this time to make her happy. He then went up to Hira and kissed her. Their longing for each other explodes at this moment. Hira panicked and pushed Suho away and ran away. At this moment, Beiji came to pick up Sharon for a trip as promised. And Sharon didn't want to go anywhere. She told Beiji that she had met Suho. Beiji urged Sharon to go, but Sharon had already met Suho and would not let it go. She always thought she was the victim. Beiji angrily grabbed Sharon by the neck. Just then Hira came back to the suit store with nowhere to go. Beiji told Hira to leave, but Sharon wanted her to stay. He invited Hira to join him for a drink. As soon as she sat down, Sharon asked Hira for information about Suho. When she heard that Hira doesn't plan to fall in love with Suho, Sharon was so happy. And when she found out that Hira and Suho had kissed, she was filled with anger. Sharon woke up the next day upset. She asked the housekeeper who was prettier between her and Hira, but the housekeeper, who told the truth, was rebuked by Sharon. She had no choice but to pretend to admit that she was beautiful. Looking at her exquisite self in the mirror, Sharon realized that she had to take the initiative to win Suho's heart. So she went to a public phone booth and dialed Suho's number. Then she got an old man to answer the phone. It turned out that Sharon was trying to get close to Suho by using a trick. Then she messed up her hair. Then she sat on the ground and pretended to faint. Then a luxury car drove up. Suho got out of the car and ran towards Sharon. He picked her up in a princess hug. Sharon was lost in her own fantasy. But then there was a siren in her ears. An ambulance pulled up to the side of the road. Sharon immediately started her performance. I didn't realize that it wasn't Suho who came running to the ambulance. It was Suho's secretary. Sharon opened her eyes weakly and saw a strange man and a paramedic. She immediately refused. And so her first plan failed. So Sharon's second plan was put on the agenda again. That day, Hira and Suho were invited to Beiji's book club. At the end of the day, they found each other there by accident. Beiji took the opportunity to tease them. He didn't expect Sharon to show up uninvited. Beiji's face fell. After the book club, they had dinner together. After dinner, while Suho was paying the bill, Beiji whispered to Hira that she must be good with Suho. Hira lowered her head shyly. Then Sharon hugged Suho to measure his shirt size. This made the two of them look like they were having an affair. Suho was so scared that he didn't dare to move. Hira was not happy to see this. On the way home, Hira was jealous and asked Suho how he met Sharon. Obviously, they didn't meet last time when they went to the suit store together. Suho explained that he had something to do, so he went to the suit store alone and met Sharon. To Suho's concern, Hira's perfunctory answer made him angry. He pulled over to vent his frustration. They get out of the car and argue. Suho promised that they'd be in love for a month. If she doesn't like him by then, he would give up. Hira agreed. They agreed to be in love for a month. Suho was so happy. On the other hand, Sharon wanted to reclaim her reincarnated husband, Suho. No matter how much Beiji tried to stop her, she wouldn't let go, and Sharon decided that Suho was her destined love. Beiji had no choice but to tell the truth. It turned out that Beiji was the first wife of Sharon's family. She was thrown out of the house because she couldn't have children. After that, she lived in her mother's house like a sinner. When she found out that the new wife had given birth to a child, Xiao Fen, she bribed the maid to carry Xiao Fen out secretly. Then she secretly took Xiao Fen and switched identities with the beggar's child. In the end, she gave the beggar's child back to the maid. Xiao Fen was left by the beggar in front of the house. The servant who swept the floor picked her up and raised her as a maid. Sharon, who learns the truth, is unmoved. She thought that Beiji had deliberately fabricated a story to deceive her. Sharon's obsession with Su Ho was too deep. She couldn't tolerate her lover being taken away by a maid. That day Su Ho came to Sharon. Sharon was so excited. She didn't realize that Su Ho had come to make a clean break with her. Sharon was disappointed. Su Ho paid for Hera's customized dress. Then he left without looking back. Sharon hated Hera to the core. That day she invited Hera to pick out a new dress. As soon as Hera entered the room, she saw a room full of wedding dresses. She was instantly attracted to them. Naively, Hera said that if she got married, she wanted to wear Sharon's handmade wedding dress, but that's what pissed Sharon off so much. Hera saw the veil and couldn't help but try it on herself. Sharon picked up the scissors and approached Hera step by step. Then he stabbed Hera directly. At that moment, the words, "Ghost of the Nine Springs," appeared on Beiji's arm. Hera touched her face in horror and saw blood on her hand. She asked Sharon why she was doing this. Undeterred, Sharon tried to do more. Hera pushed her to the ground. Then the two of them got into a fist fight. Eventually, Hera left the suit store in a state of disarray. When the housekeeper is applying medicine to Sharon, she notices the words, "Ghost of the Nine Springs," appearing on her arm. Sharon instantly realizes that this is her punishment for hitting Hera. Soon after, Su Ho wanted to buy Sharon's land. Sharon took the opportunity to ask for a month's stay at Su Ho's house. To do so, she purposely turned off the heat in the store and opened all the windows to make it look like repairs were needed. With this trick, Su Ho couldn't refuse her request. After successfully moving in, Sharon started her third plan. She changed into an elaborate nightgown, because she expected Su Ho to come to the kitchen to get water, so she wore her pajamas and pretended to read a book in the dining room. And sure enough, Su Ho did show up. When he saw this, he put down his cup and left, but Sharon called Su Ho and poured tea for him. After achieving her goal, she went back to her room, but Su Ho threw the cup back on the table in disgust. The next morning, Sharon made a big breakfast for Su Ho, but Su Ho didn't even look at it and went out directly after greeting Hera. In the end, the meal he had prepared for Su Ho was just a treat for Hera and her aunt. Sharon was so upset. That night Sharon did the same thing again. She put on her pajamas and waited for Su Ho at the restaurant, but she didn't realize that Su Ho had already prepared a pot of water. This time, Sharon's plan failed again. That day, Beiji came to the suit store to look for Sharon, but she found out from the housekeeper that Sharon had moved to Su Ho's house, so she immediately went to Su Ho's house. Beiji angrily pushed open the door and beat her up. A depressed Sharon sends a message to Su Ho that she's not feeling well and has to cancel the dinner with him to talk about the partnership, so Su Ho asked Hera out on a date instead. The two of them had fun catching babies and watching the night view of the Han River together. Sharon also found out from her aunt that Su Ho went on a date with Hera. She got angry and chopped onions at home, and then she went to Hera's room and beat up her doll. That day she secretly put on Hera's ring, but suddenly the curse came back to haunt her. The pain was excruciating and Sharon burned. The next day, Sharon quietly takes Hera's ring when she's not home. Then she went to the jewelry store and asked the owner to make an exact replica of the ring. It turned out that she wanted to swap the ring. When Hera came home at night, she couldn't find the ring, so she asked her aunt if she had it. Auntie said Sharon was the only one home today, so Hera found Sharon. She asked her if she had seen her ring. Sharon admitted that she took it to the cleaners. Hera asked Sharon to get it back now. Sharon refused on the grounds that it was too late and the store was closed. In the end, the two of them got into a disagreement. Hera went back to her room, comforted by her aunt. Then Sharon pushed open the door and barged in. The two of them got into a fight without saying a word. Su Ho was changing clothes when she heard the argument. Sharon and Hera were fighting. Then Su Ho arrived. Sharon immediately pretended to be hurt. Su Ho helped her out. He told Sharon that he'd arrange for her to stay in a hotel from next week. Then he turned around and left to comfort Hera. A few days later, Sharon got the new ring made. She had her boss melt down the real ring and set it on her dagger. Then she returned the fake ring to Hera. But Hera, in order not to jeopardize the cooperation between Su Ho and Sharon, she quietly left with her luggage. Sharon was very happy to find out. When Su Ho came back, he told Sharon straight away to move out. So he saw through Sharon's intentions. Just as Su Ho was leaving, Sharon couldn't take it anymore and told him the truth, but told Sharon that he only loved Hera, and that he will propose to her soon. Su Ho's words completely made Sharon desperate. When Sharon moved out of the house, Su Ho found Hera and brought her home. That day Su Ho couldn't wait to see Hera in her wedding dress, so he brought Hera to try on wedding dresses. Just a while ago, Su Ho suddenly took out the diamond ring he had prepared for a long time and proposed to Hera. Hera, who thought she would never be happy, finally got her happiness. That day Sharon invited her to the suit store under the pretext of making a new dress for her aunt. The purpose was to ask her to sneak the shirts she made for Su Ho into Su Ho's check room. What Auntie didn't know was that these were no ordinary shirts. Sharon learns from her aunt that Su Ho has proposed to Hera. At this moment, Sharon's heart ached. Soon she asked Hera to meet her. She offered to make a wedding dress for Hera, but Hera refused and left. On the other hand, Beiji found out that Kai Fu's tomb had been discovered. Inside, there were paintings and prayers. This gave her hope that the curse could be lifted. Looking at the prayers in front of her, Beiji's heart was full of mixed feelings. Sharon rushed to Beiji's house and was dumbfounded when she saw the prayer. Kai Fu recorded everything that happened that year. The prayer recorded his blessings on Ming Xian and Xiao Fen, and his curse on Ruilin. Sharon was very unhappy with the content of the prayer. Then Suho burst in. He saw the sketchbook and the prayer on the table. In order to prevent Suho from realizing the truth, Sharon immediately picked up the prayer and tried to burn it, but the candle flame suddenly went out. The words, "Ghost of the Nine Springs," appeared on Sharon's face. She panicked and immediately picked up the mirror and saw the words on her face. Thinking that Suho was still watching her, she immediately ran away from the place. But Beiji's handwriting disappeared. This was a sign that her curse had been lifted. Suho stayed behind to look at the book and prayers. Beiji found Sharon hiding and put a hat on her face to cover the writing, and told her that if she would make Hera's wedding dress, the writing would disappear. But Sharon was still upset. Suho looked at a portrait. He learns the story of his past life and the truth of Sharon's curse. Suho chose to accept it all. Beiji asked Suho to give Sharon a chance to redeem herself. He blames himself for the sin of switching the two children. Suho finally agreed to make Sharon's wedding dress for himself and Hera, and so Sharon began to make a wedding dress for the handmaiden she once hated. Just as Xiao Fen stayed up all night to make her wedding gown. As long as Sharon made a wedding dress for Hera, Sharon would be able to atone for the sins she had committed. Soon a perfect wedding dress was made. Beiji was overjoyed to see the dress. Then she lifted Sharon's hat, and realized that the curse of the ghost of the Nine Springs had disappeared from her face. Sharon immediately looked in the mirror to make sure, but her heart was overwhelmed with sadness. Suho received a call from Sharon asking him to come to the store to try on the finished dress and apologize. In the evening, Suho came to the suit store. He looked at the dress in front of him. Sharon showed up to wish Suho a happy wedding, but Suho's attitude was always very cold. Sharon asked Suho to try on the suit. When Suho got changed and looked in the mirror, he saw Sharon walking towards him in Hera's wedding dress. Suho didn't want to get involved with Sharon anymore. Sharon, who was furious, picked up the knife and ran towards Suho. She stabbed Suho in the heart. Then she ran away. At the same time, Beiji seemed to sense something. There was an immense pain in his chest. Suho stumbled and fell to the ground. Then Hera called him. He looked at Hera's call but didn't have the strength to answer it. Finally he collapsed in a heap. Sharon, who escaped from the suit store, walks down the street in her wedding gown in a state of shock. She remembers all the things she did to Suho and Hera. Then she came to Beiji's house. She collapsed on her beach hair. Beiji was shocked to learn that Suho had been stabbed. She immediately ran to the suit store and saw Suho in a pool of blood. She broke down and cried. Beiji tried to pull out the knife from Suho's chest, but a golden light erupted and pushed her to the ground. Then the knife magically pulled itself out of her chest and fell to the ground. The housekeeper came back and was shocked to see this. Beiji quietly hid Sharon's knife. Doctors at the hospital are trying to save Suho. Hera also arrived at the hospital. The doctor told Hera that Suho was stable. The doctor was surprised. Suho was bleeding profusely but no wound was found. It turned out that the knife had blended into Xiao Fen's ring. Not only did it save Suho's life, it also gave him superpowers. On the other hand, Sharon thought of something when she realized that Suho is not dead. Beiji was ready to give up on Sharon, because now she is hopeless. Sharon left with her clothes in disappointment. Beiji had no regrets. But Sharon, overwhelmed by hatred, would never give up. In the hospital, the housekeeper was with Suho, but accidentally noticed Suho's finger moving. At that moment, a female doctor came to check on him. She dismissed the housekeeper on the pretext of Suho's checkup, but then the female doctor turned out to be Sharon. The real doctor had already fainted in the office. Sharon gently touched Suho's face. Then she picked up a pillow and prepared to kill Suho again, but a golden light suddenly erupted from Suho's body, and Sharon was knocked away. At that moment, Suho also woke up. Sharon immediately disguised herself as a doctor and ran away just in time to run into Hera, who came to the hospital. When Suho woke up, he forgot why he came to the hospital. He forgot all about Sharon stabbing him. It turns out that Beiji erased Suho's memory after the incident. Suho picked up a glass of water to drink, but when he touched it, it broke, but his hand was unharmed, and the doctor was shocked at how fast Suho recovered. On the other hand, Sharon inquired about Suho's condition. Just then Suho came to Beiji's house. He saw the passport and Sharon's luggage on the table. He also heard Beiji and Sharon arguing. At that moment, Beiji saw Suho and got scared. Suho also learns from his lover's argument that his memory has been erased. Sharon hears Suho's voice and rushes to the living room. Suho took Sharon's passport and tore it up. Sharon is shocked that Suho remembers everything from his past life. And Hera also came. Now Beiji knew that he couldn't hide it anymore. So Suho offered to take Sharon to the police station to surrender. Sharon, who is still obsessed, doesn't know that she has done wrong. She opened the car door and climbed onto the bridge and jumped as desperately as she had jumped off the cliff back then. Without Sharon's sabotage, Hira and Suho are very happy and sweet. That day, Hira came home to a pleasant surprise. She saw photos all over the house. All of them were happy memories of herself and Suho. Hira decided to say goodbye to Sharon's suit store. The housekeeper was very happy to see Hira. It turned out that Hira had come to return the coat. Ever since she wore the coat, many strange things have happened around her. Now she has her own happiness. She no longer needs the coat to change her fate. At that moment, someone pushed open the door of the suit store. The person who came in was Sharon, who was already dead. Hira was shocked when she was ready to leave. Sharon, who had returned, had lost her memory and forgotten about Hira. Hira immediately ran away from the suit store in panic. Then she immediately found Suho. He told him that Sharon had not only come back, but also lost her memory. Suho immediately proposed that they get married early so that no one can break them up. Beiji rushed to the suit store when he realized Sharon was back. Sharon was so happy to see Beiji. She didn't even remember what happened between them. It turns out that Beiji prayed for Sharon to forget Suho and Hira. She didn't expect her wish to come true. Then she saw the coat returned by Hira. She immediately asked the butler to keep the coat for herself. Soon it was the day of Suho and Hira's wedding photo shoot. And then Beiji arrived with a ceremonial mist. It's a wedding dress from the Joseon era. Suho and Hira put them on and bowed to each other. It was as if Beiji had seen the young master and the young lady over 200 years ago. Everything is finally back on track. Hira is selecting the photos she just took. The fill light suddenly hit Hira because of the staff's negligence. Suho saw this and immediately pushed away the fill light. When Beiji saw this, he had a bad feeling in his heart. When he got home at night, Suho thought back. Recently, there were too many unusual things about himself. It was all related to the dagger that stabbed him. Suho immediately went to Beiji. He asked to see the knife that stabbed him, but Beiji suddenly felt something was wrong. She asked Suho if he had taken the ring he had given them before and made it into a couple's ring. But Suho said no, the ring is now in Hera's custody. Beiji seemed to realize something. That day she got the ring in Hera's hand. After looking at it, she immediately realized that Sharon had switched the ring. Soon after, Suho and Hira finally got married. All their friends and family gave them their blessings. Beiji had been waiting for this day for over 200 years. Meanwhile, Sharon came to Beiji's house looking for her. She saw Suho and Hera's wedding photo on the table. Turning around, she found the coat that Hira had returned. When Sharon touched the coat, Sharon's lost memories came back to her. That's how Sharon remembered everything. Unbeknownst to her, Suho and Hira were still in a state of bliss. Beiji returned home from the wedding to find Suho's wedding photo torn to shreds. The coat hanging by the side had also disappeared. She realized everything in her mind. Sharon won't stop after remembering everything. Suho was driving Hira to her villa for her honeymoon. On the other hand, Sharon puts on Hera's coat and asks Beiji why he lied to her, and Beiji tells her that it's all over. She decides to break up with Sharon once and for all. Now Sharon's love has turned into hate. Now a man in black sneaks into Suho's car. Suho and Hira were still discussing what to eat for dinner. They were unaware of what was happening in the car. Then Suho was about to drive to buy ingredients. The man in black watched Suho leave in triumph. Suho looked at the wedding ring on his hand with Hira and smiled happily. Unbeknownst to him, danger was creeping up on him. At a traffic light intersection, Suho tries to slow down by slamming on the brakes, but unexpectedly realizes that the brakes are not working. So that's what Sharon wanted. Since she can't have Suho, Hira won't be able to have him either. Eventually, the car went out of control and rolled into a ditch. Sharon smiles when she realizes that her plan has worked. At that moment, Hira didn't know anything. She waited for Suho's return at the villa. Two students passing by the roadside spotted the car in the ditch. They were shocked at the sight. One of them took out his cell phone and recorded a video. And that's when Suho climbed out of the car unharmed, and they captured it all on their cell phones. Suho came to the police station to report the incident, but he was not happy with the police's perfunctory attitude. Suho got up and flicked the table. The glass cracked until it was dark. Suho arrived home after buying food. Hira was worried. Suho lied that he was delayed by a small car accident. Then he went to his room to rest. When Hira made dinner, Suho was so tired that he fell asleep. The housekeeper saw the video of the car accident uploaded by the students on the internet. He shared it with Sharon. Sharon recalled that after she stabbed Suho with a knife, he also recovered faster than normal. This made Sharon realize that Suho had become an immortal being like her. Then the police caught the suspect, the man in black, but the man didn't recognize him. Just as the man was speaking out of turn, he suddenly and inexplicably fell down. The police thought he was acting. Then the paper on the table flew up and cut the man's face. But the police didn't take it seriously. Unbeknownst to them, it was all Suho's doing. That day, Beiji came to see Suho. She deliberately sent Hira away. Then she prepared many glasses. She picked up a glass and crushed it. At Beiji's request, Suho picked up the glass. With just a little pressure, The glass shattered instantly. Beiji was shocked. In order to confirm her horrible suspicion, she asked Suho to try to turn off the light with her mind, but Suho refused. Suho had already sensed the change in himself. He just didn't want to admit it. Beiji suddenly realized that her hand was injured. This means she is no longer immortal. Suho went back to his room and looked at his wedding photo with Hira. He didn't want to admit that he had become an immortal monster. Then Hira came back from the supermarket to buy food. Beiji lied that he wasn't feeling well and was leaving. At that moment, the lights in the kitchen were suddenly turned off. Beiji's mind suddenly realized everything. Suho appeared at that moment. He confessed that he did everything. The three of them looked at each other in disbelief. Beiji told Suho that what he was going through was exactly the same as what he had been through. He suddenly became very strong. He could also control objects with his mind. They have to recognize the fact that Suho has become immortal. Hira and Suho cheered each other up. They promised to cherish each other's happy moments. Meanwhile, Sharon is frantically taking care of her hands. Since Suho and Hira got married, she has not only gotten gray hair, she even got wrinkles on her hands. So she rushed to Beiji's house, and she bumped into Hira. Angrily, Sharon grabbed Hira by the throat. Beiji tried to stop her. Sharon pushed her away. She had lost her mind. Seeing this scene, Hira grabbed a dagger and stabbed at Sharon, but she was no match for Sharon. Just then Suho arrived in time to stop Sharon. At that moment, the lights in the room flickered on and off. Hira was shocked by what she saw. Sharon's hair was not only gray, even his hands were wrinkled. Sharon ran away in panic. Suho immediately picked up Beiji. She wished them to be together forever, but before she could finish her words, she closed her eyes forever. In the suit store, Sharon looked at her reflection in the mirror. She pushed down the mirror in anger, and fell into a state of deep regret. This is the price she has to pay for all the bad things she's done. The butler was about to leave the suit store. Sharon asked him to do one last favor for her. The butler came to visit Hira, and brought her a dress. He said it was Sharon's last gift to her, but Suho just took the dress and walked out the door. He lit a fire and burnt it. At this moment, Sharon is waiting for her own end. As the fire got hotter and hotter, Sharon's destiny came. The fire began to burn from her feet. She recalled every scene in which she had hurt Xiao Fen. She had burned her husband and Xiao Fen to death in a fire. Now she will also die in the fire, until she disappears from this world. Since then, Hira and Suho have been living happily ever after. That day Suho took advantage of Hira's good mood. He suggested that he didn't want to have children. He wants to live their life as a couple for the rest of their lives. Hira knew Suho's concern. He was worried that his immortality would affect his and Hira's child. 10 years later, Hira, the team leader, had a dinner with her colleagues to celebrate. Everyone felt that Suho is getting younger and younger. He looks exactly the same as he did 10 years ago. Hira feels bad when she hears this. She knew why. She can only make up an excuse to get out of it. When she got home, Hira immediately started applying masks. She wished she could age slower. Suho wanted Hira not to worry about this. Suho proposed to move to the countryside to live a quiet life with Hira. That day, Suho and Hira moved to a new house in the countryside. The movers mistook Hira for Suho's sister. Hira felt bad when she heard that. She was aging day by day, but Suho hasn't aged at all. Gradually, she felt that she was not good enough for Suho. That day, Hira packed her bags and left quietly, but Suho came back and bumped into her. Hira told him what she was worried about. Suho hugged Hira tightly. He stayed with Hira for the rest of the day, until she became a gray-haired grandmother. Suho took Hira back to the old castle, the place where they met again. Here, they had many good memories. Suho took Hira to the place where they came before. They snuggled together under the setting sun, looking at the beautiful scenery. Suho reminisced about their happy memories. Hira left on Suho's shoulder. This is the end of the movie. If you're interested, please like and follow the movie. See you next time.